let's make some homemade bread. Alright, so we're going to start off by getting 2 cups of warm water, 2/3 cup of regular white sugar, and then we're going to use a 1.5 tablespoons of activated dry yeast. So first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get that water in the bowl. We're going to put the 2/3 cup of sugar. We're going to stir it around, and then we're going to put our 1.5 tablespoons of activated dry yeast, and we're going to let this ferment to where it's nice and fluffy, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to our other ingredients. So we're going to need 6 cups of flour. You can divvy it up in a separate bowl. That's what I do. We're going to need 1/4 tablespoon of salt. We're going to need 1/4 cup of oil. So these are the main components that's going into our bread once it's ready. All right, so we're going to go ahead and let this froth up. And before we go ahead and add the flour and the salt and the oil in here, we're going to let it ferment really good. So basically that's going to grow real good. You can see it's doubling already. While I'm waiting for that to go ahead and finish growing, we're going to go ahead, this is just the flour, so it's 6 cups of flour. We're going to go ahead and add in our sea salt, and that's the one I use, is just the fine sea salt. We're going to add that sea salt into the flour mixture and give it a little mix. So we're going to use 1.5 teaspoons. And we're going to go ahead and put that salt, which I just did, the salt's right here, put that in that mixture, and then we're going to give it a little stir with a fork and mix it up real good. So like I said, we're just going to stir this up just a little bit to get that salt mixed in there. That way we don't have to sit there and keep measuring everything out while we're trying to mix it in the mixer. Alright, so that should be good. That's all you got to do, just mix it in there a little bit. And this is currently what our yeast looks like, and that's exactly what you want it to look like. So now we're going to go ahead and get that 1/4 cup of vegetable oil put in. So nothing special, it's just the greater value vegetable oil. And we're going to make that 1/4 cup. And you're going to dump it right into that mixture of the yeast and water and sugar mixture. So it's in there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and put the kneading attachment on. And then we're going to give this a little bit of a mix. And then we're going to start adding in that flour and salt mixture. Just a little stir is all we need. So the way I do mine is I take and add 1 cup of flour in at a time. So just go ahead and kind of divvy up that flour and get that dough. Once you do that, we'll get that started with making the dough. So make sure that we lock it down. And I turn mine on slow to get it started. Once it's started and you see it mixing, then just going to go ahead and go in there and add the rest of your flour mixture, because you want it to mix up really good. You see it's mixing really, really good in there. We're going to let that mix, and then I'm going to lift it. And then I'm going to add the rest of the flour in here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just finish dumping in the rest of this flour without making a huge mess. So it's all in there. Empty bowl. And now we're going to stick that back in there. We're going to lock that back down. And we're going to keep it on slow, because if you go fast, it's going to make that flour fly out. So we're going to go slow and let it keep mixing up. And once you see it starting to pull that flour, see how it makes the flour fly out? Once it starts getting that, you're going to go ahead and move it up just a little bit on number 2. And we're going to let it sit here and mix it up. And it should pull all the flour from the sides. And while it's kneading it, Alright, so I cut mine off every now and then and lift that back up. And we're going to pull that flour down and that mixture, because sometimes it doesn't mix very well down at the bottom. So pull it back down in there, lock it back up, and we're going to turn it on a little bit higher. Let it get it kneaded really good. Alright, so that is good. So we're going to go ahead and pull out the dough, and we're going to knead it a little bit on the counter, and we're going to grease this bowl and then put it back in here and let it rest. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and knead this a little bit more. If it's still tacky a little bit, go ahead and add a little flour. Not a big deal. We just want to make sure it's good and mixed up. And you can tell when you're mixing it how good it is. Alright, so this is pretty much done on the mixer. You don't want to over knead it. So just kind of put it into a small bowl. Like that. We're just going to put it in a little bowl. Put that to the side. Alright, I don't use the same mixing bowl because I need it for making noodles. So I got a different bowl. We're going to grease this bowl, and then we're going to put the dough back in the bowl, roll it around, and let it stay and grow. So let's get this done real quick. Now you can use the vegetable oil that I have, or you can use the canned spray. So I just use the canned canola oil spray, and we're going to coat this real good. You want to make sure it's coated really good because we're going to roll that dough around in it. So just kind of roll that dough in that bowl. And then something I have found why the bread does grow is if you don't cover the bread correctly, you can give it a little bit of spray too. If you don't cover it properly, I use saran wrap to put over the top of the bowl. And that's just to keep the heat in after, once it's in there, put that saran wrap over the top of the bowl and then cover it again with a towel. So we're going to go ahead and put that saran wrap on there. You don't want to put it too tight, just enough to help keep the heat in for this to grow. So as the bread grows, it'll push up that saran wrap. Because once this grows, we're going to push it back down in the bowl, and we're going to put it into either rolls or 2 loaves of bread. So let's get this to grow and we'll come back. Alright, so one thing I do because we have an older home which is built in 1910. So it does have drafts. It's an older home until everything's finished. I go ahead and start my preheating on my oven. And on my stove, it has the vent back here that blows the air out. And I do that so it helps the bread grow a little bit quicker. So generally it's about 1 hour, but with this house that we have, it does take a little bit longer. So I do this just to help it stay at a steady warm temperature. Alright guys, so our bread has been rising for exactly 1 hour. And it is currently at the size that we want it. So we're going to go ahead and take it out of the bowl, put it on the counter, and start rolling it into small rolls. So I already have my baking sheets over here, and they are sprayed with that same canola oil. So they have a greased bottom. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out and get it worked up. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and dump that out on the counter. We're going to smash it back down because we don't want it big and fluffy. So smash it back down, make it into a workable ball. And then we're going to start cutting off the pieces and rolling them into rolls. Alright, so we got 1 roll done. We're going to go ahead and place that on that cookie sheet. Now, I do try to tuck it in at the bottom to make it a little bit more rounded at the top. So just your preference. So another type of roll I make is what's called a knot. Roll out your dough and then turn it into a knot. These are the knots. These are the rolls. We're going to let them grow again. Bread is ready, guys. So we're going to go ahead and get that in the oven. Alright guys, so the bread is done, and then what we're going to do is just put the butter on the top, and that's it. Voila, beautiful bread rolls and knots.